In this video, I'm going to share with you 4 ways that overeating and procrastination could be linked, and most importantly, what you might be able to do about it. You might find this video helpful if you are somebody who finds themselves procrastinating in order to eat, or eating in order to procrastinate. So here's the 2 scenarios. Scenario 1 is when you have a day that you're just getting a lot done. You're busy, you're focused, you're making progress with so many things. And you tend to find on days like that, you're not even thinking about food that much. Your cravings for food are pretty low. Versus scenario 2, where it's a whole different kind of day. Maybe you can't peel yourself up off the couch. Maybe you're spending hours scrolling on your phone. All the things that you've been telling yourself you should be doing, you're not doing. And on these days, you find yourself quite preoccupied with food. You're back and forth to the kitchen, you're grazing, maybe you're on the apps ordering food. And so it looks like, well, if every day could just be like scenario 1, I wouldn't have a problem with food. And I get to feel pretty good about myself because I'd be so productive in getting all this stuff done. And this just isn't the reality a lot of the time because we have energy levels that fluctuate, our motivation fluctuates, and our appetites fluctuate. So the first link I want to talk about dopamine. So in scenario 1, when you are having all these wins throughout your day, you are getting that reward activation in your brain. Neurochemically speaking, your brain is getting all these little dumps of all these reward neurotransmitters, which is highly motivating, which is part of what dopamine does. But in the second scenario, when you're having a day where it feels like you have 0 wins, your brain chemistry is craving that reward. So food is going to become more appealing. When you are very productive, you're getting all these things done, you don't need food for that reward. So you might just have food based on what you fancy or whether you're hungry or not. Versus the other situation where it's like, yeah, I need food because I'm hungry, but I also need food to give me this reward. When we think about it like that, the focus can shift to, rather than how do I make myself super productive every minute of the day, to how do I take care of my brain chemistry? And it's been shown that even tidying up gives you a dopamine boost. We know that movement increases dopamine production. Going outside increases dopamine production. Connection, all these things. So even if you're not having a super productive day, whatever reason your energy levels or your motivations are lower, you might think about other ways to give yourself some small wins throughout the day, which may in turn help reduce some of the cravings that you have, the need that you have for food to provide those things. This leads us quite nicely onto link 2, which is about all or nothing thinking. So dopamine is about what's going on in your brain chemistry, but the all or nothing thinking is about what is going on in your thinking style and how could that be affecting your experience. The all or nothing thinking style is one of the most derailing types of thinking styles that many of us have. And it's this idea of, if I cannot be this super productive person that has a day that looks like this, then what's the point? I might as well be the complete opposite. It's all or nothing, it's this or it's that. So if you say to yourself, I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to go to the gym or I'm going to do yoga, and then you get up in the morning and you don't do those things, it's like mentally you write the whole day off. Because you're so all or nothing about it, you cannot motivate yourself to do the smaller things, to get those small wins I just spoke about. For many of us, this black and white all or nothing thinking is happening automatically. Our thoughts are just doing it. So you might recognize yourself as going, yeah, I'm an all or nothing thinker. It's not as straightforward as to go, okay, I'm just gonna stop doing that all or nothing thinking thing. So in order to navigate this, what it's going to require is the awareness to be able to notice when you are slipping into all or nothing thinking, so that you can call yourself out on it. Go, oh gosh, yeah, I'm being a bit all or nothing about that. What small thing could I do to give myself a bit of a win? Because those small things and those small wins also create momentum. So on its own, a small thing doesn't feel like enough. For example, if you're like, okay, I didn't go to the gym, but maybe I could go out for a stroll mid-morning, your brain's going to go, well, how many calories is that going to burn? What's the point in that if we're not getting our heart rate up and sweating it out? So the skill is to learn to catch those thoughts in the moment and go, well, actually, if this is about needing those small wins, That is how I get further. I get further by taking smaller steps than trying to make giant leaps. And link 3, I'm going to call it rejecting reality. So there are times in life when we are required to do things that we really don't want to do. They might be boring, they might be frustrating, we might be confused, we might have a lot of anxiety about getting it right. And yet life is requiring us to do these things. Now, one example could be the first few years that I was a therapist, I did my own taxes. I couldn't afford an accountant. So this was one of these things that life is requiring me to do my taxes. And I really am having a lot of difficult feelings about doing that, a lot of pushback. I don't want to. So when we're stuck in that position of you have to do this thing, but I don't want to do this thing, well, now we're at an impasse. Okay, like how do we get out of that when these two opposite things seem to be true? I have to, but I don't want to, and I feel like I don't even know how to make myself do it. When we turn that into a fight, this is why procrastination can be so exhausting, because it looks passive, but it is tiring. We turn it into a fight and it's like this. It's like two sides pressing against each other and neither side can go anywhere. And the harder I'm kind of resisting this, the more tired I am getting. And when we feel drained, especially mentally and physically, that might be another reason to turn to food to boost us up. So in order to release that energy to do the things we need to do, I think there's a piece in here about accepting that life requires really boring, rubbish stuff of us sometimes. It is the most arduous task to do taxes. It's even boring and annoying to have to prepare food, think about food, or plan food. When I go on holiday, it's wonderful. Like, food is being prepared for me and there's so much choice. And then in my day-to-day life, I have to figure it out. So here's how I work through this. It's all very well to say, like, accepting it is going to be helpful, but how do we do that? So one of the ways that I started doing it was I start with, you don't have to. And the reason why I do this is because the minute I feel like I have to do something and I don't want to, it triggers like my rebel. And my rebel isn't necessarily rational. She feels like a very stroppy 14-year-old girl. So I need to get my rebel on side if I've got any hope of breaking through this procrastination barrier on this task. So with the taxes, what it would sound like is, Sarah, you don't have to do your taxes. You could just not do your taxes. That is technically an option. Okay, what happens? What's the result of that if I don't do my taxes? Well, the result is HMRC are going to start chasing me, they're going to slap me with fines, and worst case scenario, I could end up in prison. So, okay, I am allowed to choose that option. I'm a human being with free will, and if I want to go to jail for not doing my taxes, I can choose that. So I present it to myself. You can choose that option. You can not do your taxes. What are you going to choose? And the minute it's presented to me as a choice, there can be a bit of a softening of going like, okay, well, actually what I value is my freedom, so I want to choose that. It doesn't mean it's suddenly going to be fun, but it takes away some of that conflict, some of that exhausting battle, which just feeds procrastination. So let's say you're a parent and you have to do the kids' lunch boxes every day, and you're like, oh man, I hate this job. I hate this job. Okay, what if you said to yourself, I don't have to do the kids' lunch boxes? What's the result of not doing the kids' lunch boxes? You play that tape through, and I'm pretty sure you're going to realize in your values, actually, I don't want that for my kids, and I don't want that outcome. It's not in line with my values or the kind of parent I want to be. So now you're making a choice based on your values versus I have to make the kids' lunch boxes because that's what I have to do. It's a bit of a mind game, because if you could just make yourself do these things that you feel like you have to do, then you wouldn't struggle with procrastination. You wouldn't need to watch this video. So the fact that you relate to procrastination being a bit of a struggle at times suggests that if you can just shift the way you're talking to yourself about it and thinking about some of these things, you might be able to make a bit of a break, especially if you're feeling quite stuck. I would just like to take a minute of your time to tell you who does not sponsor my videos. My videos are not sponsored by BetterHelp. I have been approached by their representatives, but I do not like the BetterHelp model. Therapists on BetterHelp are just getting a fraction of what you are paying. If you're working with a therapist and they're really helping you, wouldn't you prefer it if they were getting all the money you're spending? I'm seeing my colleagues feel like they have to start working for BetterHelp because the other usual avenues of referrals that private therapists get are drying up. I do not want to see my industry being taken over by tech companies, so please look at your local directories. There's an international one, Psychology Today. If you go to their website, I know in the UK and the US, you can find therapists local to you and they will keep every penny you pay them. That's all I want to say, is that if you're looking for a therapist, please shop local. And link 4 is about the inner critic. So if you're somebody who's going through life and you always feel like you're never doing enough, and you feel like you're in a constant state of guilt for not doing what you think you should do or not doing what you do well enough. If you have a to-do list that never ever ends and you feel like you're carrying that around with you mentally or maybe literally, this one might apply to you. And it's this idea that giving yourself a break just feels a bit wrong because you're not doing enough anyway, so you haven't earned a break. So if you stop and you're not being productive, like that voice in your head that is telling you that you're being lazy, that you're not doing enough, that self-judgment for daring to stop and not be doing something productive can be really loud. And so in order to stop and have a break, food works really well at just shutting that voice out for a bit, and often food combined with a distraction like a screen of some kind. It's like you can't give yourself a proper break because in order to stop, you have to completely distract and switch off, because otherwise that sense, that feeling of guilt that you're not doing something is going to pester you. So the experience will feel like, oh, I'm eating to procrastinate, but maybe you're eating because it's so hard to give yourself a break, to actually spend some time not doing something that is either productive, helping somebody else in some way, or progressing you in something. It's okay to just do things for the sake of doing things because you like doing them. It's the idea of being able to be. So if you are somebody who switches between you're either doing or chasing, or you're completely checked out, like the doing and chasing is always very future focused. It's about once I get everything done, then I can give myself a break. And of course the checking out is just like completely switching off from life. And neither of those is really living. So when I'm talking about practicing the capacity to just be, I don't necessarily mean sitting there and staring into space or meditating, but do you give yourself any time and space where either you're doing something or you're not doing something, and that there's zero outcome to it. You're not trying to achieve anything or get anything done, but that it's done with complete permission, because you might say, yeah, I watch TV, I scroll on my phone. But when those are things that you feel like you're sort of sinking into, as opposed to consciously choosing, yeah, I'm going to have a sofa day today, or yeah, I'm going to give myself an hour on social media. It feels very different when you've given yourself full permission, a little bit like with food. When you give yourself full permission around food, it feels different. Full permission around food doesn't mean go completely unconscious and eat everything, but just completely switch off. It's about changing the energy, because when we have permission to do something, then we can be much more conscious about our choices around it, about what is it I actually want, what is it I actually think is going to serve me in the long run. Anyway, I hope this has given you some food for thought. I just want to remind you, I have recently set up a second YouTube channel called The Conscious Growth Therapist, where I talk about a lot of these themes that can be applied to food or can be applied in other areas of your life. So you might want to check that out. And if you want to work with me on your relationship with food, I run therapy groups. I have an intuitive eating course coming up. I will pop all the links to everything in the description below. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.